Welcome to The Last Prayer, a channel where real human stories unfold with raw emotion and truth. Here we bring you dramas that mirror life itself, intense, surprising, and deeply moving. Stories about courage, sacrifice, and those moments that change everything. If you crave narratives that touch your soul and make you reflect on what truly matters, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button now, because every story here deserves to be witnessed, and yours might be next. Imagine that on a cold, rainy night in the heart of a sprawling city, under the fluorescent glow of street lights reflecting off wet pavement, your entire future rests in the hands of a stranger you don't even recognize yet. The clock shows 10:17 p.m. Most people have retreated indoors, leaving the downtown streets nearly deserted except for the occasional car splashing through puddles and the distant wail of sirens. The wind cuts through the avenues like broken glass, and the rain falls in sheets that blur the line between earth and sky. Sarah Mitchell huddles beneath a crumbling awning outside an abandoned storefront, her arms wrapped protectively around her 4-year-old son, Danny, who sleeps fitfully under a threadbare blanket that smells of mildew and exhaust fumes. Her clothes are damp, despite her efforts to stay dry. Her shoes, sneakers held together more by hope than laces, are soaked through. She's been homeless for 8 months now, ever since losing her job at the diner and then her apartment 3 weeks later. Tomorrow morning, she has a court hearing that will determine whether she keeps custody of Danny or whether the state takes him into foster care. The thought makes her stomach twist into knots. She shifts slightly, trying to give Danny more of the blanket, when movement across the street catches her eye. A woman in a dark coat and heels walks quickly along the opposite sidewalk, her leather briefcase clutched tight against her body. She glances back over her shoulder, once, twice, and Sarah immediately recognizes that look. She's worn it herself too many times. Fear. 2 men emerge from the shadows about 30 feet behind the woman, their pace quickening to match hers. They're not talking, they're not laughing, they're hunting. Sarah's heart pounds. Every instinct screams at her to stay put, to protect Danny, to not get involved. She has court tomorrow. She can't afford trouble. She can't afford anything. But she's also a mother, and she knows what fear looks like. The woman quickens her pace, her heels clicking frantically against the wet concrete. The men close the distance. One of them reaches into his jacket. Sarah acts without thinking. She carefully lays Danny against the wall where he'll stay dry, then bolts across the street through the rain. "Hey!" she screams at the top of her lungs. "Hey! Someone help!" The men freeze, startled. Sarah grabs the metal lid from a nearby trash can and slams it against a light pole. Clang! 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 The sound echoes through the empty street like gunshots. She positions herself between the woman and her pursuers, her eyes wild, her voice desperate and loud. "Get away from her! I'm calling the cops!" She doesn't have a phone. She hasn't had one in months. The woman in the coat stares at Sarah with wide, terrified eyes. Then understanding floods her face. She bolts toward the better-lit intersection ahead. The 2 men exchange glances, weighing their options. Sarah keeps screaming, keeps banging the lid, drawing attention from windows above and a car slowing down nearby. One of the men curses, and they both retreat into an alley, disappearing like smoke. Sarah stands there trembling, rain soaking her hair, her heart hammering so hard she thinks it might crack a rib. The woman has stopped about 20 feet away, breathing heavily under a streetlight. For a moment, their eyes meet across the distance. 2 women from completely different worlds, connected by a single moment of violence, narrowly avoided. "Are you okay?" Sarah calls out, her voice hoarse. The woman nods slowly, still catching her breath. She opens her mouth to speak, but sirens suddenly grow louder nearby. Someone must have actually called the police. The woman glances toward the approaching sound, then back at Sarah, conflict clear on her face. "Thank you," she says, her voice barely audible over the rain. "Thank you so much." Then she turns and walks quickly in the opposite direction of the sirens, disappearing around the corner. It's only then that Sarah notices the leather briefcase lying in a puddle where the woman had been standing. She runs over and picks it up, water streaming off its surface. She wants to call out, to return it, but the woman is already gone. Sarah clutches the briefcase and hurries back to Danny, who's still sleeping. She tucks the case under the awning to keep it from getting more damaged, her hands shaking from adrenaline and cold. Minutes later, 2 police cars cruise slowly past, spotlights scanning the sidewalks. Sarah pulls deeper into the shadows, making herself small. She knows how this works. Homeless woman with a leather briefcase? They'd assume she stole it. They'd arrest her. And then she'd miss court. And then she'd lose Danny. She doesn't open the briefcase. She just holds it close and waits for morning. The courthouse smells like floor polish and fear. Sarah arrives at 8:47 a.m., 13 minutes early for her 9-hour hearing. She's wearing the same damp clothes from last night because they're the only ones she has. She tried to clean up in a gas station bathroom, scrubbing her face and hands with rough paper towels, but she knows she looks exactly like what she is, a homeless mother fighting to keep her child. Danny sits beside her on the hard wooden bench outside the courtroom, swinging his little legs and humming a tune he learned from a street musician last week. The briefcase sits on Sarah's lap. She'd tried to find the woman this morning, asked a security guard if anyone had reported it lost, but he'd just looked at her with suspicion and told her to take a seat. Her caseworker, Mrs. Rodriguez, arrives with a tight smile that doesn't reach her eyes. Sarah, how are we doing today? We're okay. Sarah lies. Her hands won't stop shaking. The judge is running a few minutes behind. Judge Patricia Carmichael. She's fair but firm. Just answer her questions honestly, okay? Don't embellish. Don't get emotional. Don't get emotional. Sarah wants to laugh. How can she not get emotional when they're deciding whether to rip her son away from her? At 9:14, the bailiff calls her case. Mitchell versus State, regarding custody of minor child Daniel Mitchell. Sarah takes Danny's hand and walks into the courtroom. The space feels enormous and oppressive at once. High ceilings, wood paneling, the American flag hanging like a judgment in the corner. She sits at the respondent's table, Danny beside her in a chair too big for his small body. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Carmichael. Everyone stands. The door behind the bench opens, and Sarah's entire world stops. The woman who walks in, black robes flowing, leather briefcase in hand, expression composed and authoritative, is the same woman from last night. The same terrified eyes that had met Sarah's across a rain-soaked street. The same voice that had whispered thank you before disappearing into the darkness. Judge Carmichael's eyes sweep the courtroom in routine assessment, then land on Sarah. For exactly 3 seconds, her professional composure cracks. Her eyes widen fractionally. Her grip on the briefcase tightens. Recognition flashes across her face like lightning. Then the mask returns. She sits, arranges her papers, and speaks in a measured tone. Please be seated. The room fills with the sound of people settling into chairs. Sarah can barely breathe. She clutches the table edge, knuckles white. Does the judge remember? Will she say something? Should Sarah say something? Judge Carmichael reviews the file in front of her, and when she looks up again, her eyes find Sarah's with an intensity that makes the air feel thick. Ms. Mitchell, she begins, her voice steady but carrying an undercurrent that only Sarah can detect. I've reviewed your case. I understand that you're currently experiencing housing insecurity and that the state is questioning your ability to provide adequate care for your son. Yes, Your Honor. Sarah manages, her throat tight. I also understand, the judge continues, glancing at the caseworker's report, that despite these circumstances, Daniel has been attending a community program, has no signs of neglect or abuse, and that you've been actively seeking employment and housing. I have, Your Honor, every day. Judge Carmichael sets down the paper and leans forward slightly. Ms. Mitchell, I'm going to ask you something that might seem unusual. Last night, around 10:30 p.m., where were you? The caseworker looks confused. Sarah's lawyer starts to object, but Sarah speaks first. I was downtown, Your Honor, near Maple and Fifth. And what were you doing there? Sarah glances at Danny, then back at the judge. I was keeping my son dry and I saw someone who needed help. So I helped. The courtroom is silent. Judge Carmichael nods slowly. Did you, at any point, find an item that didn't belong to you? Sarah reaches down and lifts the leather briefcase onto the table. Yes, Your Honor. I've been trying to return it. It's yours, isn't it? Judge Carmichael's professional facade finally shows a crack, a slight softening around her eyes, a breath she didn't know she was holding. Yes, Miss Mitchell, it is. She pauses, and when she speaks again, her voice carries weight that transcends the legal proceedings. Last night, I was followed by two individuals with clear intent to harm. I was alone, vulnerable, and genuinely frightened for my life. A woman I had never met. A woman with every reason to look away to protect herself and her child, instead put herself at risk to help me. She didn't ask for anything in return. She didn't even know who I was. She just helped. The caseworker shifts uncomfortably. Sarah's lawyer looks stunned. This court, Judge Carmichael continues, is tasked with determining what constitutes adequate parenting. We look at housing, income, stability, and those things matter, but they're not everything. She looks directly at Danny, who's watching with wide, curious eyes. Then back to Sarah. What I saw last night was a mother who, despite having nothing, still had the courage and compassion to protect a stranger. A woman who, when faced with danger, thought about others before herself. That tells me more about her character than any housing report ever could. Tears stream down Sarah's face, but she stays silent. Judge Carmichael straightens in her chair. Here's my ruling. Custody will remain with Ms. Mitchell. However, I'm ordering the Department of Social Services to provide immediate emergency housing assistance and to fast-track Ms. Mitchell into their employment program. I'm also appointing a family advocate to help navigate resources that are clearly being underutilized. We'll reconvene in 60 days to assess progress. The gavel comes down with a sharp crack that sounds like a door opening. Ms. Mitchell, the judge says, as Sarah tries to process what just happened, you saved more than my life last night. You restored my faith in humanity. Don't prove me wrong. I won't, Your Honor, Sarah whispers. I promise. As they leave the courtroom, Danny tugs on her hand. Mommy, why are you crying? Sarah kneels down and pulls him into a hug so tight he squeaks. Because sometimes, baby, when you do the right thing, the universe finds a way to do right by you too. Reflection. Life has a strange way of connecting us. The woman you help in a dark alley might be the person who holds your future in their hands. The moment you choose compassion over self-preservation might be the moment that changes everything. Sarah Mitchell didn't help Judge Carmichael because she knew who she was. She helped because that's who Sarah is, a mother, a protector, someone who still believes in doing right, even when the world has done her wrong. And in that single act of courage, she didn't just save a life, she saved her own. This story reminds us that our actions ripple outward in ways we can never predict, that character reveals itself in crisis, and that sometimes the most powerless among us hold the most profound strength. We never know when our moment will come, when the universe will test us to see what we're truly made of. But when it does, we have a choice. We can look away or we can step into the rain. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the power of one moment of courage, then subscribe to The Last Prayer right now. We're building a community of people who believe in real stories about real strength. Hit that subscribe button, and let's keep sharing these powerful moments together. Your story might be next.